This presentation is really geared towards providing a refresher on the basic essay organization skills and how to select sources for your essay. And this is a component of the freshman composition courses that I've taught and am currently teaching. And I feel like there's a need to remind students of this because it seems like these ideas get lost in the fray sometimes, and I want to help everyone understand how to correctly compose an effective essay, especially one that's going to argue points. And I think most essays will argue some point and not be just a basic report. As students progress in any college setting, I think the requirements for the essays are less reportage and more focused on constructing an argument and defending that argument. So that's the type of essays that this is working with. Basic organization of the essay, and these are two primary components. There are many more other components of organizing the essay, and you can look at those in other presentations I've given. But I think students sometimes forget the importance of a thesis statement. A thesis statement has to state the argumentative purpose of the entire paper. Whatever argumentative edge you're putting to your essay, that has to be conveyed. What is the main idea of your paper? What is it that you want your audience to come away with after reading your essay? What do you want them to understand? What do you want them to see? What do you want them to realize? And if you can put that into words, then that will be the first step of developing that thesis statement. But the thesis statement has to argue. Be sure that it has an argumentative drive to it, an argumentative edge. You want to persuade the audience to think a certain way or to side with you on a certain issue or realize something that they may not have seen. Had they read this story themselves, they may not have realized this, or have they, had they been exposed to this topic before, maybe they wouldn't have understood it in the way that you want to present it. After you have a thesis statement idea and have that presented, then you have to divide up your essay, the body of your essay, into various paragraphs. Those paragraphs must begin with a topic sentence. And what I see so many times is that students, especially when we're dealing with literature, students want to write a topic sentence or offer a topic sentence that just sort of rehashes a plot point or is a statement of fact of what's going on in a story. Or they just want to tell something that's very factual. That's not a strong topic sentence, especially for an argumentative paper. In an argumentative essay, the topic sentence has to be sort of a sub-argument, a sub-point of your thesis statement. And it needs to be structured so that you are offering an argumentative statement. And this is how this helps you as a writer. If you write a topic sentence that's only a statement of fact, and you're talking about a story, and this happens, X happens in the story, where does that leave you to go in the rest of your paragraph if you're trying to defend that statement? Because we already know it's a statement of fact. What more is there to say about it? When you have a topic sentence that has an argumentative drive to it, then the remainder of the paragraph is spent explaining, defending, supporting the statement that has been made in the topic sentence. And that's why you have to do that. It has to be an argumentative point because the purpose of that topic sentence, the purpose of the paragraph, is to provide another point that supports your thesis statement, which everyone wants to prove or at least offer some convincing evidence for by the end of the essay. So it doesn't need to be a statement of fact. It has to relate to the thesis statement. It needs to argue a point. And then once you've stated it, then you have to support it with adequate evidence and supporting source materials. If you write a paper, if you write an essay, and you have a paragraph that argues a point but does not offer outside support or evidence from the text, that your primary source text, then you're not writing a successful paragraph and you need to revise it. Every paragraph in the body should have some evidentiary support, something from the primary source, and then if you have secondary source material to support it, then you want to use that as well to substantiate the claims you're making. It's very important that this happens in your paragraphs and that you watch, but that you don't put all your factual statements in one place, in one paragraph, and then wait somewhere else to present all of your source material. That's separating everything. The sources need to immediately defend and support the ideas that you're suggesting. And you need to find source material with that is adequate and appropriate for your topic. And this is where we get into the next point about how to select your sources. And I think maybe the last statement here should be the first one. The internet is not your friend when you're finding source material. I think a lot of people get into a hasty uh, uh, place and they want to just find whatever they can find, the least amount of effort necessary. And when you do that, you're typically going to rely on sources that aren't really going to be appropriate sources for these types of papers. Wikipedia is not a valid or credible source. Wikipedia is a site that anyone can contribute any information to, and the information does not have to be valid. And the information may not even be true or correct. And it takes a while before the people who sort of defend Wikipedia or monitor those sites to go in and change that information to make it credible or to hope that it's credible. You know, Wikipedia, it's a good starting point. I tell students who are, if you're looking for data or you're looking for information that you're not sure anything about your topic, you need more information on it, go to Wikipedia and look. And if you want to use sources from Wikipedia, don't use Wikipedia as your source, but you can look down. Often they link or they cite most of the statements that they make. You can possibly pull up some of those sites, and they will be credible sources. You know, if they come from something like Time Magazine or some credible source, something that you deem credible or that is deemed credible by your professor, then that could be used. But Wikipedia itself should never be used as a source. It's a lazy way of trying to do something, and the information may not even be true that's there. Similarly, and I guess this happens less in the information age because people get to the internet and use Wikipedia, but encyclopedias and dictionaries are also not acceptable sources either. And I want to explain those separately. Encyclopedias are not really acceptable because encyclopedias offer very generalized knowledge. Yes, the information should be credible that's coming from it, but it's very generalized. And the purpose of writing an essay is to offer specific details and specific evidence to a situation. And so the encyclopedia is not specific enough. Encyclopedia work is what we did as, you know, I remember in middle school, junior high, elementary school, even into high school to a certain extent, you could do that and get away with it. But with collegiate work and higher level work, you can't really go to an encyclopedia because your professor is expecting you to find more specific information. And it's easier to find that if you look through more appropriate academic journals or professional journals, things that would provide specific information about the situation itself that goes beyond just that general knowledge aspect or component of encyclopedias. Dictionaries aren't acceptable for a bit of a different reason. A lot of people want to start out, if you're writing an essay on, I don't know, love, people will often write Webster's Dictionary defines love as blah, 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 blah. Or Webster's Dictionary defines this other term as whatever. You don't want to do that because think about your audience. And most of us, when we're writing at a college level, we're writing to other college level people or people who have graduated and have obtained degrees. Don't or won't most adults understand a dictionary, a definition without having to have a dictionary handed to them or a dictionary definition provided? If it's a term or it's a word that's very complicated or very difficult or very unique that someone may not understand, then possibly a dictionary could be used. But in most cases that I've seen people throw out this Webster's Dictionary defines this term as, it's not really necessary because anybody reading it would understand knows what the definition would be, and that's not the purpose of defining a topic or a subject. So that's why those aren't really valid. What you should be looking for, as I said before, are academic or professional journals. That's what you want to find and consult. And there are a number of those in the library that can be obtained through your library websites, like Galileo, if you're, the USG system, which my school actually is. You want to go through these academic journals and look for the subject matter that you're examining. You can also look, if you're looking at literature, you can look at academic sources that have provided commentary on these particular stories or poems or plays and use the information there. Maybe someone has said something similar to what your idea is or has something close enough that it can support the same idea that you have. That's what you need. Those are the things that you need to do. And that shows that you're not A, being lazy, and B, that you're actually obtaining sources that are valid and credible that are useful in an essay of this type. Sources by critics or researchers who have already studied the primary source. That's sort of like if what I was just mentioning, if a person has written an essay on, um, uh, the Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, then if you can find a large amount of material that's been written on that story, find another author who says something similar to what you're saying, or an argument that coincides with maybe the ideas that you have, then that source can support what you have to say. The other thing is, if you're trying to, for example, if we're working with the Yellow Wallpaper, if you want to sort of diagnose or think you have an idea of what's wrong with maybe the woman in the story, then what you might need to do is consult a medical journal or a professional medical source, that explains the condition or predicament you think that this character's in. And then you can use that as a source to highlight what you have to say. But you don't want to go to very generic websites to obtain that information. And this gets me back to why the internet is not your friend. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean that it's true. And just because there's a site that's running source material or things that it says something, it doesn't mean that it's going to work. I think I may have used this in another presentation, but I had to do a brief report, I think, on the situation surrounding World War II and Germany. And of course, there was a lot of information about the Nazis and the Holocaust, and that sort of played into the information that I was needing to present based on a book that I was discussing in my class. This was an undergrad college course. And I happened upon a site that seemed very well put together, and it was well informed, it seemed, but as you read it, or as I read it, it said, that the Holocaust never occurred, that no Jews were killed by the Nazi regime, no one really suffered, and concentration camps didn't exist. That's not a credible source. The site itself looked like it would be very credible with the information and the images and the pictures that it provided, but when you got down and started reading it, it did not work at all, because that it was, just a false site, a site that's presenting incorrect and inadequate information, because the Holocaust did happen. Jews were killed, as well as many other people. So, you have to really analyze, but if you're just looking really quickly at things, you can pull information up and it doesn't work. And that's why I think the internet sometimes is not the best place to begin your search. You should start searching within the academic and professional journals. Don't be afraid to go to the library and look for credible sources there. There are a number of journals that have been cataloged there. There are also a number of books and textbooks, or books rather, that examine certain topics or certain stories or certain authors' lives or the work of certain authors, and all that stuff could be incorporated into any sort of essay and considered credible. So I hope this helps. I hope this provides some insight and some instruction, I guess, on these two topics, on how to organize and construct with argumentative topic sentences, and how to find the appropriate source material to make your essays be all that they can be.